Taylor Swift is very wedded to the modern Me Too victim-oriented feminism. And she's very also wedded to the idea that she's been oppressed as a woman in the
Yeah.
music industry, which is complete BS. And so it should not be a surprise. Can you imagine if the situation were reversed and Baldoni did a movie in which he had a character that represented Blake Lively getting shot to death by him? In
Yeah.
other words, if Baldoni had put out a movie where he shoots Blake Lively's character to death, can you imagine? Talk about harassment and bullying. Can you imagine the outcry over that? And yet, Ryan Reynolds and Blake Lively stage a mock murder of Baldoni for laughs, and no one has a problem with that.
Talk about Taylor Swift. So yes, we will. So I think what we've known all along, and what I've always tried to point out, is that you don't get to that level of success without being a ruthless businesswoman in this case. And to get there, you have to curate an image. And these text messages that have been revealed with her and Blake Lively help shatter that image of her as a girl's girl, goody two shoes, and put into a clearer focus that she is in fact a mean girl. Correct?
Yes. Look, I know that Taylor Swift, she's great to her fans. I know that she's great to the people who work for her. But I do think that she is very wedded to the idea of modern victim feminism, which people need to understand. I don't like either side of the coin. I hate modern victim feminism, and I also hate the angry manosphere. But Taylor Swift is very wedded to the modern Me Too victim-oriented feminism, and she's very also wedded to the idea that she's been oppressed as a woman in the music industry, which is complete BS. And so anyway, this should not be a surprise. And
do you have the text pulled up there? Let's make sure.
Yeah,
let's read. So it says Taylor texted Blake in early 2024 referencing Baldoni and the upcoming New York Times hit piece, with Taylor texting, "I think this bitch knows something is coming because he's got out his tiny violin." And it's that type of language which just runs contrary to how she's attempted to be perceived. But it actually does. I made the comment. I said, I listened to her new album. I skimmed her new album. Let's be honest. The song Canceled, which is, of course, about Blake Lively.
It is. Well, I'm glad you brought up Canceled, because let me say this. Some of Taylor Swift's defenders have tried to tell me and others that Taylor Swift was just being a good friend when she sent Blake Lively that text, and when she tried to support Blake. She didn't just send her a text, by the way. Taylor Swift bullied Justin Baldoni. She ambushed him at Blake Lively's penthouse,
which her PR team claimed was not true, and that she was surprised when she showed up there. She's like, "Oh, how did I get here? I don't know what's going on." So again, that's what I'm saying. These were PR maneuvers.
They were. And some of her defenders and fans have tried to claim that she did not know the situation, that Blake Lively was manipulating her just like she was manipulating everyone. Well, maybe, except you mentioned the song Canceled. Taylor Swift's latest album includes a song Canceled, which supports Blake Lively and ridicules Justin Baldoni, and actually uses the same reference to the tiny violin. It's clearly a reference to Baldoni. So here's my position on this. Let's say that Taylor Swift was manipulated by Blake and didn't know what was going on in 2024. Well, she has had plenty of time to figure out the truth of the situation now that so much has been exposed through these dueling lawsuits and in the media and online. And so for her, on her latest album, to still include that song Canceled, defending Blake Lively, supporting Blake Lively, and basically attacking Justin Baldoni, that to me is unacceptable. It's one thing to say, well, she didn't know what was going on and she really thought maybe the guy was abusive because that was the BS that her BFF was giving her at that time. Well, perhaps so, but the woman has had plenty of time to learn about the truth. I guarantee you her team has learned about the truth. I guarantee you they've been following all the twists and turns of this. She would not have included that song Canceled in her latest album if she were not still supporting Blake Lively. So there's no excuse in my mind for Taylor Swift and her support of Blake Lively and her bullying of Justin Baldoni. Look, there were references in the latest round of text disclosures with this discovery process. There were references made to Baldoni being in a cult. In other words,
he's the Baha'i religion,
Baha'i religion, which in my estimation is not a cult, does not meet anyone's definition of a cult. And if you look into it, it's basically a universalist religion anyway. They don't even preach exclusivity. But Blake Lively referred to it as a cult. People don't know how to take a genuinely spiritual guy in Hollywood. And I think that that's where this breaks down. Some of this is broken down is because Justin Baldoni and the production company Wayfarer that he was working with and for and heading up that was producing this film, I think that what the mistake that they made was they were too sincere. They were coming at this production from a deeply spiritual and deeply emotional and deeply, I think, kind perspective and genuine perspective. And that is the opposite of what Hollywood is. And it's the opposite of what Blake Lively is.
So
and I think
she's very type A. And she gets what she wants. It seems like she gets what she wants.
Right.
And he's very touchy-feely and can't we all just get along? Hollywood is not the industry you work. Okay, you can be an actor and be the weird guru-esque touchy-feely person, I guess. Like, look at...
and when we say, by the way, I just want to say, when we say touchy-feely, it's probably the wrong choice of words because I'm not talking about, like, literally... But in the sense of someone who is very spiritual, hippie, like basically kind of neo-hippie, right? Peace, love, and all that, man. And that, I just don't think that Blake Lively, and I don't think a number of these other people, Hollywood people, I don't think that they know how to take that. They assume that there must be some kind of darker hidden agenda. And in Blake Lively's case, I think she just wanted to take over the film and she was pissed that she couldn't.
Yeah,
right?
I don't think she had necessarily a hidden agenda outside of the very blatant agenda of taking over the production. And here's the thing. He was a producer on this film. Being the hippie-esque guy can work if you're just being an actor, but to be a producer in Hollywood, you have to be a shark. To be an executive in Hollywood, you can't run on emotion. You have to run on numbers. You have to run on getting your way. And a lot of times that means doing so at the expense of other people. Nobody who reaches the level of a Ryan Reynolds gets there by being Mr. Nice Guy to everybody. Now, there might be some who kind of hold that image. Taylor Swift is an example of somebody who's cultivated aspects of that image. But you can assume that if somebody reaches that level of success, that zenith on the back end, meaning not the acting or the singing side, but on the producing side, on the money side, that they have screwed a few people over in their day. Or at the very least, they've conducted some business that left somebody else wanting more, even if it wasn't necessarily screwing them over.
Right. You have to be tough. You have to probably be a little bit Machiavellian. And so you had, I think you had really here, in part, a kind of a culture clash, but you then also had someone with Blake and Ryan Reynolds. And I think now we're seeing Taylor Swift. You had some people who were very much manipulators. And so I think that what's happened with Baldoni is that he was basically like a lamb to the slaughter. He was going into this production wide-eyed and innocent and kumbaya. And he was going up against some sharks. And so, and by the same token, these sharks didn't know what to make of someone who was actually genuine. They're always looking, people like Blake Lively and Ryan Reynolds, and maybe also Taylor Swift, they're always looking for the angle. So here they are, they're with this nice guy who's wanting to hug, and he's like, let's talk about our backgrounds, and let me tell you my personal stories and all of that. And instead of seeing it as genuine, they're like, what's this dude's angle here?
I don't even know if it's that. I think to that type of person, that type of earnestness probably revolted them.
I totally agree.
I would imagine that they actually found it revolting. I believe that she saw all of those things in him because of his personality, and I guarantee you it made her feel nothing but disgust.
Manipulators like Blake Lively, they do not, they see kindness, they see appeasement only as weakness. It's kind of like thinking about Hitler and Chamberlain. I asked Roy Price, former head of Amazon Studios. He's produced a lot of films. I asked him flat out.
Some people who support Blake Lively online have tried to tell me that this is just normal behavior. And in fact, men do this all the time.
That's totally untrue. All of that to a studio or producer would be a little disconcerting. You kind of want people who want to do their job. You don't want an editor who wants to suddenly act.
Yeah.
Or an actor who wants to edit.
Let's talk about how Blake Lively was branded a effing terrorist by the executives over at Sony. Tell us about this.
Well, a lot of what was going on with this whole controversy was that Blake Lively was also trying to manipulate and threaten Sony into forcing Baldoni to release Blake's version of the film and into forcing Baldoni to basically hand over seed control of the film to Blake. And so you had Sony actually in this really uncomfortable position of recognizing that Blake was the problem, but of being so terrorized by Blake and so threatened by Blake that they had to play nice and they had to go along with this and pretend. And so I think what you're referring to here is that there have now been released in this discovery process conversations between Sony executives about what a nightmare Blake Lively was and how, yes, she was terrorizing them with her demands and her threats pertaining to this movie because she wanted to basically be the de facto director, she wanted to be the editor, she wanted to be the costume designer. I mean, she interfered with multiple people's roles on this film. I want people to understand it wasn't just Baldoni, it wasn't just his team. The costume designer was annoyed by her. The editors were annoyed by her and terrorized by her. So, and then as it turns out, the producers were.
Yeah, so it says a senior producer on It Ends With Us branded Blake Lively an effing terrorist over her 17-point list of demand to return to the set of the movie. Her name was, is it Andrea Giannetti? Used harsh descriptions of the actress in court documents seen by the Daily Mail after she unveiled her requirements in November of 2023, possibly sabotaging the entire project. Giannetti said that the production of the film was an effing shit show and that Lively thought the film's director, who also co-starred, was unprepared, indecisive, and inexperienced. Like I said, I believe that she saw all of those things in him because of his personality, and I guarantee you it made her feel nothing but disgust.
I think where his error was in being weak, in being too kind, in acquiescing too much. And with a person like Blake, it's like a shark, you know.
That's what I'm saying. As director, he should have
blood.
As a director, his job was to be like, no, that's not what we're doing. So, I mean, he does have to be held, obviously not the lawsuit and everything. This is all beyond that. But at the level of the film as it was getting made, he's like, look, this is my production company that's producing it. I am directing it. I am in charge. I appreciate your input, but we are doing this right now. And that sounds easy to do, especially if you have a naturally disagreeable personality. But it's another thing entirely. I saw somebody in the chat, it might have been Destroyer to All Trolls or Vamp Fashion, said he was basically a nothing burger and she had a track record. Yes, she did have more Hollywood clout than him, even beyond just being married to Ryan Reynolds. As an actress, she had more name recognition than him.
I think that if you look at the background of this film, Baldoni and Wayfarer, they tried very hard to even get Blake Lively to sign on to this, and they felt like when they got her to sign on that was really a kind of a coup, that they had really lucked out. Like, wow, this is a more established actress than what we were expecting. This is a bigger star than we were expecting. This is great. I think they were coming at this already from a position of weakness.
Yeah.
It's like, we want to hold on to her. And so Baldoni thought that if he acquiesced to her at times, and same with Jamie Heath and Wayfarer, that if they acquiesced to her, then things would go smoothly and they could hold on to her, and that there'd be a net gain. Okay, we have to give a little bit here. We have to put up with some BS, but the net gain will be that we have a really successful movie. And by the way, they did end up having a successful movie. The other thing is, I think Blake realized pretty early on that she had a trump card to play, which is the Me Too trump card. And I mean, Trump isn't Donald Trump, but you know what I mean? So she had the Me Too card, and that's where the terrorist allegation comes in, because she was terrorizing Sony, threatening that if they did not pressure Baldoni to acquiesce to her demands, and if they did not acquiesce to her demands, and Baldoni did not give her the creative control that she wanted, then she was going to push these claims of sexual harassment, and she was going to take as she ended up doing, very innocuous acts by Baldoni and twist them into something bad and push that narrative. And look, this kind of thing, now that people have awakened to Me Too, to the BS that Me Too largely has been, I don't know if it would be as successful now, but this was peak Me Too era. And I think that she knew that all she had to do was claim harassment, and then they would roll over for her. And that, in fact, is largely what happened.
Yeah. So this was in the documents that were released about all of this stuff. It said Sony executives privately observed that the negative publicity around Lively was driven by her own conduct. On August 11th, 2024, it's Tara Grant, seriously, Tara spelled Tahra, Bro, we've gone too far with the names. Tara Grant, VP and Chief Communications Officer at Sony, wrote, quote, "She orchestrated all this drama in a totally unsavvy and amateur way and basically threatened Sony and now is mad it backfired on her." On August 15th, 2024, Tom Rothman, Sony CEO, observed that although Lively didn't deserve the backlash, she did bring it all on herself by refusing to listen to advice and by selling her products. On August 21st, 2024, Sony President Sanford, Panich, wrote, "She did it to herself. If she just let him come to the premiere or didn't make all of the cast unfollow him or kick him off of the movie and did what everybody else has done in show business for time and memorial, which is to protect the show." So saying, for as long as Hollywood has existed, your job is to protect the show, then none of this would have happened if she just done her job. The hair sell at the time was epic level stupid. She wouldn't listen. She knows better.
Yeah, the promotional stuff, her selling the various products was not helpful. But I mean, the main thing, and they're correct in noting that the main thing that kicked off this whole situation and all of the public gossiping and everything was the fact that she had him excluded from the premiere, the fact that she refused to be in the room for him during any of the promotional interviews or events, and the fact that she bullied the cast into unfollowing him. These were dead giveaways to people who were paying attention that there was tension on the set. And if she had not done these things, no one would have known, and she would have made a ton of money, and she would have come out of this being recognized as a brilliant businesswoman and back in the game fully in Hollywood and all of that. Like she did this to herself. But someone like Blake, just like an Amber Heard, cannot recognize their own contributions to these kinds of messes.
And then she was also reaching out to other celebrities, correct? Like Ben Affleck and Matt Damon. What was up with that?
Well, so she had, as I said, she had her own cut of the film. Now, Baldoni, again, as the director, he should have had complete creative control. Blake was not a director. She was not an editor. As Shane Wilder noted in his comment, she really shouldn't have even gotten the production credit that she got, but she bullied and blackmailed Sony and Wayfarer into giving her that. But the point is, she was just supposed to be an actress on this thing. And so, but anyway, she did her own cut of the film, her own edit. And what happened was then you had two competing cuts of the film. You had the Baldoni cut and the Blake Lively cut. Well, Blake Lively was trying to push her cut, and Sony said to her, "Look, we've done test screenings. Your cut does not test as well with the audience as Baldoni's." And so this is what happened then. She did a screening of her own cut, and she wanted to use some celebrity friends of hers to help her push her cut. In other words, she wanted to be able to say, well, Ben Affleck and Matt Damon, they've watched my cut of the film. They think it's great.
Yeah.
So that's what all of that was about, was trying to bring even more celebrities on board to basically bully Sony and Baldoni and Wayfarer into submission.
Yeah, it says Ryan Reynolds and Blake Lively texted Matt and Lucy Damon asking them to support Lively's cut of the film. Reynolds told them Baldoni was a malignantly vain, sociopathic fominist. A malignantly vain feminist. I'm assuming that he means feminist.
Yeah, like faux feminist.
Yes.
Yeah. Well,
with
and of
almost
course,
no sense of boundaries or shame. I cannot believe he hasn't gone to jail. The same day Blake wrote Ben Affleck seeking his support, she described Baldoni as a chaotic clown director and said that there were wild HR issues on set. She also tried enlisting Anna Wintour and Bradley Cooper in her battle against. That's crazy.
It is definitely crazy. And if you want to know what Ryan Reynolds and Blake Lively think of Baldoni, I'll just remind your audience, just look at the way that they depicted him in their superhero movie.
In Deadpool and Wolverine, yeah.
Yeah, so Deadpool and Wolverine, there is a character, I still haven't seen this movie because I don't like superhero movies, but there is a character called Nice Pool. And Nice Pool is
he's He's got
An indirect
ponytail.
reference.
Yeah, he's got the
Yeah,
ponytail.
with the man, he's got the man bun, and he's very emotive, and he's very pretends to be very sensitive, and all of these things. So he's basically a Baldoni caricature. And by the way, notice what happens to Nicepool in that movie. He gets shot to death by Ladypool, by the Blake Lively character, in front of a flower shop. And again, flowers, the flower shop was the setting for It Ends With Us. And so that's about as direct of a, they were trying to be wink, wink, indirect, but it's about as direct reference as you can get. And can I just say also, can you imagine if the situation were reversed and Baldoni did a movie in which he had a character that represented Blake Lively getting shot to death by him?
Yeah.
In other words, if Baldoni had put out a movie where he shoots Blake Lively's character to death, can you imagine, talk about harassment and bullying, can you imagine the outcry over that? And yet Ryan Reynolds and Blake Lively are allowed to stage a mock murder of Baldoni for laughs, and no one has a problem with that. The other missteps that she made in terms of having Baldoni cut from the premiere and sent to the basement, not being refusing to be associated with him for any of the promotional interviews or events, having the cast unfollow him. These were the things that were the dead giveaways to observers that there was a problem on the set. It started all the gossip. And what Blake Lively did not anticipate is that people, because she has this mean girl reputation, people would look at Baldoni and they would look at her and they would say, well, she's the problem. She thought that people would look at that situation and would say, oh, well, clearly he's the problem. No, people figured out what the issue was.
It's weird because she talks about him being unprofessional and not knowing what he's doing. But one of the bare minimums you have to do as an actor is if you don't get along with your co-stars, you're going to have to go on the press tour together and fake it. It's just the way it is.
Hey again, everybody. I'm back. It is Colonel Kurtz, or rather, I should say, Blake Lively today.
This is the Blake Lively wig.
That's right. So if you've seen me before, then you know that I'm actually a brunette. But this wig, and I should say this shirt, I don't know here. I like it because it makes my boobs look big too. But
it says Blake lied.
Yes, Blake lied. Yes, there we go. I actually have not to be inappropriate here on this family show, I have a small chest, but for some reason this thing just makes my boobs pop out. But yeah, this is the outfit that I wore when I protested Blake Lively at her premiere. And this will probably be the high point of my entire life, unfortunately. But I made headline, I was, for one brief, beautiful evening, I was headline news, cover page, front story, everything on the Daily Mail as a protester who crashed Blake Lively's premiere of A Simple Favor 2 and humiliated her, according to the Daily Mail. And so there was one, I posted this on my Twitter again yesterday, but there was one moment where I was in 3 different places on the front page of the Daily Mail. So if you looked at the Daily Mail website, you saw me on your screen 3 different places. I was the cover story, I was headline news, and then I was also breaking news or whatever. And so it was hilarious. Unfortunately, they didn't link to it didn't mention my name and didn't link to my work, so I didn't get any
no clout.
I know, but at least it was hilarious. And so this is the outfit that I wore. I actually didn't wear the wig. The wig is just to be funny, but I wore this shirt and I had a big sign and everything. So I figured, since we're talking about Blake Lively again today, I'd bring it out.